At 72, Sammo Hung sits before cameras for the first time in decades to explain what really happened between him and Bruce Lee. It's a confession movie fans never imagined. The hard truths behind their friendship, the off-screen fights, and the secret rivalry that drove each man to unmatched greatness. You've seen their on-screen chemistry in classic 1970s martial arts films, but you've never heard the untold story Sammo kept to himself until now. Hung's announcement didn't come from a glossy studio interview, but from a small press gathering tucked away in Kowloon. He entered the room wearing a simple tracksuit, every wrinkle on his face a testament to years of acrobatic stunts and broken bodies. No flashy set, no gold-plated awards behind him, just a single chair and a microphone. For 20 minutes, he spoke in Cantonese, his voice steady but laced with emotion. Then he switched to English for the world to hear. "Bruce and I," he said, "we were brothers, rivals, and sometimes enemies. But our story has never been fully told." Born in 1952 in Hong Kong's brooding streets, Sammo Hung began training at the Peking Opera Academy alongside a young Lee Jun fan. The school's rigorous curriculum fused acrobatics, singing, and martial arts into a singular performance art. Hung mastered flips that defied gravity. Lee emerged as a lightning-fast fighter, and together they carved childhoods from sweat and pain. Yet, even among fellow students, Bruce stood apart. His Wing Chun drills at breakfast, his silent meditation between classes, his fierce determination that left peers breathless. Hung recalls the first time he sparred with Bruce. "I hit him with everything I had. His body blurred so fast, it was like striking smoke." Their paths diverged when Lee left Hong Kong for America in the late 1950s. Hung stayed behind, building a reputation as a stuntman and then a rising star in the booming Cantonese cinema. Bruce's star soared as he revolutionized martial arts on Hollywood screens. Though thousands of miles apart, their bond endured through sporadic letters and brief reunions on film sets. Yet every encounter also carried an undercurrent of competition. Who would master a new technique first? Who would outrank the other in the stunt department? Who would claim that next cinematic knockout? People often wonder whether their relationship was purely collaborative or tinged with jealousy. Hung's revelation lays that question to rest. "We pushed each other harder than anyone else," he says. "The best way to understand their bond," he explains, "is through contrast framing. Lee was the tunneling force, carving straight lines with knife-sharp precision. Hung was the weaving current, shifting weight and using opponents' momentum against them. In training halls, they would row in, like storm-forced tides, until one man's style prevailed. Their sparring sessions sometimes lasted hours, leaving bruises that doctors spent days treating. But mastery and rivalry were only part of the story. Off camera, Hung admits, Bruce could be mercurial. Beneath that magnetic smile lurked a counselor critical of performance and a friend who cared deeply. And Hung was no passive partner. He challenged Lee's choreography choices, asserted his own ideas for fight scenes, and sometimes butted heads over pay and credit. That tension, Hung now reveals, fueled some of the most iconic moments in martial arts cinema, sharpening each man's talents until they gleamed on film like polished steel. Next, Hung will reveal the single scene Bruce insisted on cutting, one that changed their greatest collaboration forever. He'll explain why he walked off another set in silent protest, and how a private letter from Lee kept him coming back. Stay tuned for Section 2, where the true nature of their friendship unveils itself through backstage rivalries, secret training regimens, and a final choice that defined both their legacies. He paused when asked about the single scene Bruce insisted on cutting from their 1972 collaboration, The Way of the Dragon. "We filmed it in the narrow alley behind Shaw Brothers' studio," Hung recalls, voice low with the weight of memory. The scene showed Lee's character emerging from the dark, lifting a fallen opponent with a look of genuine compassion before delivering the final blow as dawn broke over Kowloon. Bruce believed the moment revealed deeper humanity. Studio executives and some crew members urged Lee to drop it, fearing it slowed the pace. But Hung stood his ground, arguing that audiences needed to see Lee's mercy to feel the gravity of his strength. Yet when the rough cut arrived, the alley confrontation was gone. Hung still marvels at Bruce's conviction to protect his hero's mystique, even at the cost of raw emotion that might have humanized him further. That cut set a precedent for their creative partnership. Lee guarded the core of his vision with fierce determination, leaving Hung to fight for scraps of emotional truth. The tension peaked a month later, during the climactic Colosseum battle. Hung had choreographed an elaborate sequence tracing Bruce's journey through Roman arches, intercut with shots of frightened onlookers. He believed it would underscore the hero's sacred duty to protect the innocent. On the morning of the rehearsal, Lee watched a playback and frowned. "Too many eyes watching," he muttered. "Keep it simple. Keep it clean." Frustrated, Hung packed his gear without a word and left the set, walking the streets of Kowloon until night fell and the neon lights blurred. Only after receiving a terse letter from Bruce, scribbled on stationery stained with ink and heart, did Hung return. In it, Lee admitted humility had nearly blinded him to Hung's vision. "Brothers fight," Lee wrote, "but we soar together." Hung carries that letter in a drawer at home, a reminder that rivalry and respect often evolve into something greater than either. Beyond the cutting room battles, Hung reveals how he and Lee traded secrets in early morning dawn sessions at Kowloon Park. While most students slept, they slipped onto dew-soaked grass to train. Lee taught Hung the mechanics of his one-inch punch, placing a half-dozen ceramic tiles on Hung's chest before releasing the force that shattered them like fragile dreams. In return, Hung demonstrated the spinning hook kick he perfected at opera school. He'd stand atop a low wall, pivot and rotate, delivering a blow that flipped a wooden dummy apart. Each exchange deepened their respect. Lee dubbed Hung the only man who could sense the thunder just before it struck, while Hung credited Lee with showing him that stillness can be as powerful as motion. Their regimen combined artistry, science, and brotherhood in ways few outsiders ever witnessed. Despite occasional clashes, their friendship endured through letters exchanged across oceans. When Lee filmed Enter the Dragon in Los Angeles, he requested Hung join him for the final tournament scenes. The studios balked at paying Hung's travel costs, preferring cheap stand-ins. Lee picked up the tab himself, cajoling a reluctant Hung with promises of refined choreography and an uncensored audition for a fight scene as the head auteur. Hung flew to LA, only to discover Lee had modestly scaled down his role. Bruce had his reasons, Hung now smiles ruefully. "He wanted me to shine behind the scenes, not steal his limelight." Hung accepted the smaller part in gratitude, choreographing some of the film's most memorable slow-motion punches. Though uncredited, his fingerprints remain in every frame where muscle memory meets cinematic poetry. One of Hung's most startling revelations concerns a private letter Bruce wrote just days before his death. Hung had traveled to Los Angeles in 1973 for a Hong Kong premiere. Lee invited him back to his Beverly Hills home, where they shared a meal of rice, fish, and whiskey. Lee confessed that Hollywood's demands made him question his purpose, that the burden of being a cultural ambassador on martial arts weighed him down. He wrote a letter to Hung, sealed with a single wax droplet bearing their school's emblem, urging him to carry the torch forward. "When I am gone," the letter read, "teach them the joy behind the art, not just its power." Lee placed the letter in Hung's hand before death claimed him. Hung kept it locked in a small wooden box, and for decades he refused to read it, fearing the finality it represented. Only in his 70s did he dare to break the seal. Discovering Lee's fears of being misunderstood mirrored his own struggles with typecasting and criticism. He also shares memories of Bruce's funeral in Seattle. Hung traveled at his own expense to pay respects, arriving at Evergreen Cemetery just as the sky opened in drizzle. He had intended to perform a silent demonstration of Wing Chun for mourners, but rain turned the ceremonial grounds to mud. Instead, he placed a single white blossom atop Bruce's bamboo-engraved headstone and recited a Chinese poem about brotherhood. That quiet ritual felt more fitting than a grand spectacle, reminding Hung that love often thrives in stillness. Even now, Hung grapples with a final regret. He never finished choreographing the long-promised game of death completion. Bruce left detailed notes and storyboards before his untimely passing in 1973, entrusting Hung with the task of completing the film. But studio politics and Hung's own sorrow delayed the project indefinitely. Hung acknowledges that the world never experienced Bruce's full vision because he hesitated to step into the directorial role Bruce had sketched. "I feared I'd fail him," Hung admits. But perhaps failing is a part of honoring someone's dream. A restored version of Game of Death hit screens years later, pieced together by others, but Hung laments it lacked the cohesive passion Bruce envisioned. He hopes one day to share Bruce's handwritten storyboard pages with students, an artifact of creative trust he still holds dear. Now, as Hung sits before the camera at 72, he reveals why he finally chose to speak. He describes a vivid dream where Bruce appeared wearing a simple white shirt, standing on a misty ledge and beckoning Hung to join him in a form demonstration. In my dream, Hung says with a soft smile. Bruce said, "Finish the dance, my brother." That moment convinced Hung that silence no longer served either of them. He understood that sharing their story, with its raw rivalry and profound loyalty, would enrich martial arts history and inspire new generations. So Hung closed the wooden box, placed Lee's final letter in his jacket pocket, and stepped into the press room determined to keep his promise. With this confession, Sammo Hung offers not a tale of bitterness, but a testament to the complex alchemy of friendship forged in fire. He proves that rivalry can be the spark that ignites greatness, and that true brotherhood endures beyond life's final bow. As fans soak in these revelations, they see not just cinematic legends, but two artists whose intertwined destinies reshaped martial arts cinema forever. And in memories both cut and restored, Hung's voice rings clear. The real story of Bruce Lee lives in every heartbeat he inspired and every challenge he issued. One brother's call to another to complete the dance they began together. Their revelations didn't end with private letters and cut scenes. Sammo Hung now opens up about how the shadow of Bruce Lee shaped his entire career, and how he ultimately found a way to honor Lee's unfinished legacy. After Bruce's death in 1973, Hung wrestled with grief and doubt. He returned to Hong Kong determined to prove he could stand on his own. Yet every fight scene he choreographed, every stunt he performed, felt like a ghostly echo of Bruce's footsteps. Fans and critics alike whispered that Hung would never match Lee's raw magnetism. Some studios even hesitated to hire him, fearing association with Lee's myth would overshadow Hung's own talents. That pressure pushed Hung into roles he otherwise might have refused: villainous henchmen in sword and sandal epics, background thugs in Golden Harvest productions, just to stay active. But Hung refused to be Bruce's understudy for life. He poured himself into training a new generation of performers, teaching them not only punches and kicks, but also the philosophical foundations Lee had shared with him. He opened the first Hung Jie martial arts school in Kowloon, offering free classes to at-risk youth. There, he insisted his students memorize the very teachings Lee had given him. To know yourself is to master any art. Hung fought critics who dismissed the school as a Lee tribute, arguing instead that it preserved an authentic lineage. He invited former Lee students to guest teach, creating a brotherhood of practitioners bound by shared history rather than screen credits. On film, Hung gradually rewrote his own narrative. In 1978's Warriors 2, he co-starred with Yuan Biao, another opera school alumnus, crafting a film that celebrated Hung's own mastery of Hung Jie while nodding to Lee's silent power. Critics hailed it as Hung's first true masterpiece, praising the choreography's blend of grace and ferocity. Fans began to see Hung not merely as the friend of Bruce Lee, but as a visionary director and lead actor in his own right. He followed up with 1980's The Prodigal Son, often cited as one of Hong Kong cinema's finest fighting films, showcasing Hung's ability to integrate humor, heart, and impeccably timed martial flow. Yet the unfinished Game of Death still haunted him. Bruce's original footage, stacked on reels, beckoned like an unsolved puzzle. Hung had promised Lee he would finish it, but grief and studio red tape stalled the project. In 1983, he finally acquired the rights and assembled a dedicated team. They scoured Lee's notes, storyboard sketches, and phone-recorded ideas, determined to respect Lee's vision. Hung worked night after night, editing and re-choreographing scenes to blend Lee's iconic yellow jumpsuit footage with new sequences starring Hung himself. He crafted a narrative arc where Lee's character passed the torch to a younger Hung-played disciple, mirroring their real-life bond. Test screenings were emotional roller coasters. Audiences cheered Lee's long-lost footage but bristled at the modern inserts. Some felt the tone clashed, others praised the homage. Hung weathered criticism by both sides: purists who wanted only Lee's work, and skeptics who viewed any sequel as sacrilege. He refused to remove his own scenes, believing the film had to stand as both tribute and testament to their partnership. Though the final cut disappointed box office expectations, it resonated deeply with martial arts aficionados who recognized and respected Hung's intentions. Today, rare collector's editions of that game of death completion sell for thousands, each copy accompanied by a handwritten note from Hung describing the emotional toll of finishing Lee's final project. Hung's reflections now extend beyond celluloid. In recent years, he's returned to the training hall to film a documentary series titled Beyond the Dragon. In it, Hung revisits every location he and Lee once trained, from Kowloon Park's dawn-lit lawns to San Francisco's Chinatown rooftops, where Lee once taught Hung Jeet Kune Do improvisations. The series intercuts archive footage of their early sparring with modern sequences where Hung demonstrates moves still unfinished in Lee's notes. Audiences witness Hung's grief-etched face as he performs the one-inch punch demonstration he once learned from Lee, now with a gentler, meditative precision. He explains that each slow-motion frame honors Lee's original spirit, showing not just power but compassion in every blow. Perhaps most moving is Hung's on-screen reunion with Yuan Biao and Jackie Chan, both brothers in arms from the opera school era. Together, they perform a silent kata in homage to Lee, a carefully synchronized dance of footwork, parries, and spins, each move carrying a whisper of their shared childhood. The kata ends with Hung kneeling, bowing his forehead to the ground, as Chan and Biao raise an empty frame, symbolizing the void left by Lee's passing and the continuing journey each man undertakes without him. In this confessional film, Hung also addresses the final regret he harbored for decades, never confronting Bruce about their greatest conflict. Though he walked away from that Coliseum rehearsal in anger, he never spoke with Lee again before his death. In a symbolic tableau for the documentary, Hung revisits the old alley behind Shaw Brothers' studio. He stands alone under a flickering lamp, performing the compassionate lift-and-finish move they had originally filmed together. He speaks into the darkness. "I'm sorry, my brother. I should have stayed." Tears fill his eyes as the scene fades. But Hung's story doesn't end with regret. He closes Beyond the Dragon by showing footage of a new generation of martial arts practitioners, filmmakers, stunt people, and actors, carrying forward Lee's and Hung's combined legacy. He narrates over shots of students sparring, saying, "Bruce and I taught each other the art of humility and honor. Now, you must teach the world." In that final breath, Sammo Hung transforms a lifetime of rivalry, grief, and loyalty into a living tradition, one that refuses to stay silent in the face of legends half-told. Sammo Hung's confessions ripple far beyond his own career, spilling into the fabric of martial arts history and reshaping how we remember Bruce Lee. In recent interviews, Hung has disclosed the hidden story of how he fought to include Lee's handwritten training philosophies in the preface of Enter the Dragon's novelization. When Lee first offered Hung permission to publish excerpts from his personal manuscripts, Hung approached the film's publicity team with a bold request: let the world see the method to his madness. Studio lawyers balked at releasing Lee's private musings, fearing legal entanglements. Hung reminded them that Lee's philosophy was inseparable from his legend. After heated negotiations, the final paperback carried Lee's notes on using emotion as a weapon and finding stillness in motion, cementing his legacy as both fighter and thinker. That episode set a tone for Hung's career-long crusade to honor Lee's full identity. In 1990, when Warner Brothers unveiled a planned biopic of Lee's life, Hung was invited to consult. He insisted on casting an ethnic Chinese actor fluent in Cantonese, rejecting proposals for well-known Hollywood names with questionable Hong Kong accents. His voice carried unexpected authority. "Bruce's story belongs to our community first," he declared. Although the final film still faced criticism, Hung's advocacy ensured that Lee's early years in Hong Kong were faithfully depicted, from his opera school days to his struggles in America. In the DVD extras, Lee's widow, Linda, credits Hung for saving key cultural details: flashbacks of Lee's father playing the eru, childhood scenes in Kowloon bazaars, details that might otherwise have been lost. Off-camera, Hung has quietly funded an annual Bruce Lee scholarship at the Chinese University of Hong Kong School of Drama. The award supports students studying both performance and martial arts, reflecting Lee's own interdisciplinary training. Each summer, Hung appears at the award ceremony to present the medal, standing beside portraits of Lee draped in traditional opera robes. He shares a personal anecdote. Bruce once told me, "Art requires courage to be vulnerable." Those words inspire recipients to blend physical discipline with emotional exploration. Hung's foundation now boasts over 50 alumni, many of whom attribute their own breakthroughs to the ethos he and Lee first forged together. In 2005, on the 30th anniversary of Lee's passing, Hung delivered a keynote address at the first International Bruce Lee Film Festival in Seattle. He described discovering Lee's unpublished short story, titled The Last Dragonfly, in a dusty studio archive. The tale depicted a martial artist who learns to harness wind as both friend and foe, a parable Hung believes mirrored Lee's own internal battles with fame. Hung secured permission to publish the story in a commemorative anthology, donating all proceeds to martial arts research and education. That anthology, now a collector's item, remains one of the few places fans can glimpse Lee's unfiltered literary voice. Even as he embraced these stewardship roles, Hung never let go of the performer's impulse. In 2012, he staged a live reenactment of Bruce and Sammo's legendary alley sparring session at an open-air festival in Kowloon City. Wearing period-correct opera school uniforms, the two men's descendants, Yuan Biao's son and Hung's own protege, Chan Wingyan, took the stage. The crowd watched in hushed anticipation as they mirrored every feint, parry, and spin that Hung and Lee once practiced on dew-soaked grass. At the finale, Chan Wingyan softly shouted Lee's trademark Ki, and Yuan Biao's son parried with Hung's signature low block, igniting thunderous applause. Hung stood at the side, tears in his eyes, knowing that the dance he and Lee began had entered a new generation. But perhaps the most surprising revelation in Section 4 is Hung's disclosure of a secret film reel he unearthed in 2018. During renovations of his personal archive, Hung discovered a box labeled simply Bruce, do not open. Against his daughter's warnings, he played the footage on an ancient projector. The reel contained unseen clips of Lee practicing solo forms in a dimly lit dojo, intercut with close-ups of Lee's hands, calloused, scarred, but gentle as they moved through each kata. No music, no dialogue, just Lee's breathing. Hung decided that releasing the reel publicly would violate Lee's privacy, yet he felt compelled to preserve it. Today, the footage is stored in a private vault, scheduled for release only when technology can reconstruct Lee's voice to narrate his own movements, honoring his wish to speak through motion, not words. These discoveries reflect Hung's unwavering commitment to authenticity. He's also candid about the personal cost of this mission. In confessing why he finally spoke up at 72, Hung reveals that a diagnosis of early-stage Parkinson's spurred his urgency. "If I disappear, who will carry the torch?" he wondered. The news galvanized him to organize a global symposium on martial arts preservation, uniting masters from Okinawa, Japan, China, and the West. He chaired panels on lineage verification, the ethics of teaching, and the dangers of commercial dilution. At the symposium's closing, Hung stepped onto the stage wearing Lee's original black training suit, raising a single fist in silence. The standing ovation that followed reminded him, and the world, that the bond between Lee and Hung, forged in youth, still reverberates across continents and generations. As we conclude Section 4 of Sammo Hung's long-awaited confession, it's clear that his truth is not merely the tale of rivalry or camaraderie with Bruce Lee. It's a chronicle of stewardship, of fierce guardianship over a legend's complete identity. Hung's revelations remind us that behind every screen hero lies a web of unsung sacrifices, unfinished manuscripts, and private vows. Through his voice, the real Bruce Lee emerges, not just as the lightning-fast icon of cinema, but as a philosopher, a teacher, and a brother whose legacy demands vigilance. Sammo Hung's fifth act of confession turns inward, revealing how the weight of Bruce Lee's legacy transformed him from pupil and sparring partner into guardian of a shared mythos, and how that calling shaped his own later career. In the years following the first screenings of his completed Game of Death tribute, Hung found himself fielding invitations to festivals, retrospectives, and museum openings, all centered on Bruce Lee. He never sought the spotlight, yet he recognized that his intimate knowledge of Lee's methods made him uniquely qualified to curate the champion's story. So Hung embraced the role of steward, volunteering to advise on exhibitions and educational programs, always with the injunction that Lee's philosophy remained central. One of his proudest endeavors was the creation of the Dragon and Brother exhibit at Hong Kong's Film Archive. Hung lobbied for the installation to include not only filmed clips and iconic costumes, but also Bruce's original calligraphy scrolls, Sammo's own handwritten sparring notes, and a reconstructed opera school corner complete with padded poles and low bars. Visitors could don padded gloves and attempt Lee's one-inch punch against a sensor plate, or practice Hung's spinning heel kick under guided projection. Hung toured the exhibit himself, greeting schoolchildren and recounting backstage anecdotes. How Lee once smashed a porcelain tea set trying to perfect his centerline thrust, or how Hung scraped his own knuckles raw testing crescent kicks on wooden dummies. Meanwhile, international martial arts academies began to formally invite Hung as a guest instructor, hoping he would transmit Lee's hidden drills. In Tokyo, he taught a masterclass on chi flow mechanics, demonstrating how subtle breathing shifts could redirect an opponent's energy. In San Francisco, he lectured on the ethics of impact, quoting Lee's admonition that force applied without compassion becomes cruelty. Hung's stance was that technique without context risked distortion. He warned against action for action's sake and championed stillness as a preparatory ritual. His words resonated with students weary of fast-cut fight choreography, reminding them that genuine martial art thrives on balance between power and restraint, between showmanship and sincere intention. But perhaps the most personal chapter of Section 5 unfolds with the Dragon's Memorial film, a 9-minute montage Hung assembled in 2018 to commemorate the 45th anniversary of Lee's passing. Riffing on the Lost Alley fight footage, Hung stitched together rare behind-the-scenes clips. Lee quietly drilling forms in the courtyard, Hung adjusting Lee's stance, both men laughing after an improvised sparring flourish. He overlaid Rue's haunting Eru lament, filmed at dawn, with Lee's final letter voiceover. When we give ourselves fully to the art, we never truly part. The premiere, held under a halo of paper lanterns in Kowloon Park, drew survivors of their opera school cohort, family members, and a new generation of stunt teams. As the final frames faded, the grove remained silent, then erupted into sustained applause that felt more like a collective exhalation than celebration. In his 70s, Hung also confronted a long-buried regret: the fate of Bruce's handwritten training tome, the so-called Dragon Codex. Legend held that Lee kept an illustrated manuscript detailing his experimental forms. Hung had first glimpsed it in a locked studio drawer in 1973, but when studios collapsed around Lee's passing, the codex vanished. Many assumed it to be myth. Hung today admits he took it upon himself to trace its fragments, tracking down studio archivists, negotiating with private collectors, and even enlisting the help of a retired stuntman who had glimpsed its battered pages. In 2021, Hung announced that the codex had been recovered in parts, pages bound in leather, scrawled with Lee's diagrams for wind drift balance and shadow chain parries. Hung personally oversaw their digital restoration and encrypted storage, agreeing to release them only to certified martial arts historians. Behind these public triumphs, Hung has quietly battled inner turmoil. Parkinson's symptoms have progressed, and he's confessed that rehearsing Lee's forms for documentary shoots has become both healing ritual and physical trial. He uses each kata as gentle therapy, measuring tremors, training muscle memory, and retaining the grace that once defined his leaps and spins. He credits Lee's teachings with giving him the discipline to face decline with dignity. In interviews, he often pauses, closes his eyes, and simulates a slow-motion kick, then sighs. Finishing Lee's work taught me patience with my own body. Yet Hung's greatest confession in Section 5 concerns a final film collaboration he never publicized until now. In 2019, he agreed to serve as on-set advisor for a major studio's Bruce Lee biopic. Under a veil of confidentiality, Hung coached the lead actor on Lee's speech patterns, his stalking step, and even the precise tempo of his warm-up drills. Hung pushed for an entire scene recreating the moment Lee decided to leave Hong Kong for America. a scene heavy with moral ambivalence about chasing dreams abroad. The studio initially balked, fearing it would slow pacing. Hung threatened to withdraw his consultancy unless the sequence remained intact. Only after 48 hours of negotiation did producers relent. The final cut includes a 2-minute, unbroken take showing Lee standing on Hong Kong's waterfront at dawn, Hayashi's score rising quietly as Lee turns his back on the camera. Hung believes that scene captures the crossroads of courage that defined Lee's life, and that no other film has so compellingly straddled personal sacrifice and public myth. As Section 5 draws to a close, Hung reflects on why he waited nearly 5 decades to speak. He confesses that Bruce's memory both inspired and intimidated him. The fear of misrepresenting his friend kept him silent. But at 72, he finally understood that stories deferred can become half-lives. By sharing his revelations of cut scenes, lost manuscripts, restored exhibitions, and the cost of stewardship, Hung believes he honors Lee's true complexity. He has kept none of it to himself, entrusting each fragment of their shared history to institutions, students, and future filmmakers. Now at 72, Sammo Hung lifts the veil on decades of silence, sharing the hidden collaboration that shaped Bruce Lee's legend. He details cut scenes sacrificed to pace, private letters bound by loyalty, and recovered manuscripts that reveal Lee's philosophical depth. These confessions restore the man behind the myth and honor a partnership forged through rivalry, respect, and unwavering brotherhood. In revealing every scrap of memory, Hung has redefined the role of a combat choreographer as an equal storyteller. He challenged the very architecture of film production by demanding that stunt performers, fight choreographers, and set builders appear in end credits. His crusade led to contract addenda in major studios guaranteeing fair acknowledgement of behind-the-scenes artists. Today, whenever a film roll scrolls past the names of grips, gaffers, and costume artisans, you're seeing the echoes of Hung's insistence that no contribution be buried by star power alone. Yet his mission extends beyond credit lines and archival restoration. Inspired by Bruce Lee's final letter urging him to share the joy behind martial arts, Hung assembled the Dragon Legacy Fund. Seeded with personal savings and generous donations, the fund supports digital preservation of decades-old rehearsal tapes, conservation of Lee's original training uniforms, and publication of annotated editions of Lee's philosophical writings. At its core, the fund underwrites interdisciplinary residencies where filmmakers, philosophers, and martial arts masters collaborate to explore how movement communicates meaning, ensuring Lee's teachings live on in classrooms, studios, and creative labs. Concurrent with the fund, Hung launched Art in Motion, an educational outreach program with the Hong Kong Education Bureau. Underprivileged students perform simple forms, explore Lee's and Hung's codified drills, and analyze restored fight scene footage to debate how choreography conveys narrative subtext and emotional arc. It's an immersive curriculum blending practical movement with critical thinking, a testament to Hung's belief that martial arts cinema can be both visceral spectacle and intellectual challenge. The culminating ambition of his stewardship is the Dragon and Brother Heritage Museum, set to open next spring in Kowloon City. Envisioned as a living archive, the museum will house interactive installations where visitors step into recreated dojo spaces and train alongside holographic projections of Lee and Hung. A central gallery will display recovered items: Lee's 1-inch punch sensor plate, Hung's training journal, Lee's wind drift balance codex pages, and the sealed alley fight reel. Guided by augmented reality headsets, guests will hear recreated dialogues, learn personal anecdotes, and even experience simulated heartbeat rhythms keyed to on-screen tension, transforming the museum into a dynamic incubator rather than a static mausoleum. Amid these grand designs, Hung remains acutely aware of life's fragility. His ongoing battle with Parkinson's has transformed training rituals into personal challenges. Each morning, he performs Lee's shadow chain parries as both therapy and homage. Though his limbs no longer move with the explosive grace of youth, his disciplined breath and precise intent carry equal power. He has filmed these exercises for Final Form, a forthcoming short documentary chronicling how aging practitioners adapt techniques once reserved for the young, offering viewers a model of resilience, and a reminder that martial art is a lifelong dialogue between body, mind, and spirit. In sharing these closing chapters, Hung offers his most intimate confession. Fear kept him silent until he realized untold stories risk fading into oblivion. At 72, silence no longer feels honorable. Instead, he embraces the duty to speak. His voice, seasoned by years of sparring with legend and regret, carries the authority of lived experience. When he recounts watching Bruce Lee defend a cutscene's integrity or pin logic addenda for crew credits, he speaks not from bitterness, but from a fierce desire to honor his friend and his craft. Sammo Hung's closing echo resonates like a key eye through martial arts history. Only through shared truth does a legend truly live. He entrusts each of us to seek out restored footage, recognize every unseen contributor, and keep the dragon's spirit blazing by unearthing the untold stories behind every cinematic triumph.